This is it. Don't get scared now. It's a minisode. Hit it. What's up, dude and dudettes? I'm your host, Jerry D, with the first mini episode of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, and fads. If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, we got it covered. Now, this is actually our very first mini episode, and our new feature is going to be that, or our new format is that every 10 episodes, we're going to have a mini episode interjecting just to kind of spice things up a little bit and give me a little extra time to finish editing, especially once the holiday season starts coming around. But we're going to have several segments, including checking in our mail and taking suggestions, reading comments, and then we're going to have a little topic as well, along with kind of telling you the rules for our different contests and things like that. So let's get into it. All right, our first thing we're going to do is check in with SD Kluger's mail truck and open some letters to Santa. So the first one here is from Mike from Florida. He asks, what's the best and worst video game you've gotten for Christmas? Ooh, now that is a very good question, Mike. I think the best video game, if we're talking strictly 80s, would definitely be Mega Man 2. I didn't really get any games that I didn't like for Christmas. But if we're talking just ever, then in the 90s, the mid 90s, I got a 32X. It was a Sega 32X. And it was amazing because it had the Star Wars arcade game, which was fantastic. It was a great port, but it was also probably the worst but the worst system to get because there weren't very many games for it. First of all, so that's already a bummer. And then they quickly kind of started focusing on the Saturn and Sega CD and things like that. So it's not quite what I was hoping for at the time, but we have had a lot of fun. Some of my friends and I playing that Star Wars arcade game. Mike, you actually said that the best game you got was Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, and the worst was Mortal Kombat for Game Boy. Well, I love Mortal Kombat, but yeah, the one for Game Boy was was pretty bad. So I feel your pain there. All right, let's move it on. Next, we got a question here from Tom from Oklahoma. He said, what are some of your favorite 90s Christmas moments, shows, or songs? And what were teenage Jerry's Christmas proclivities? Okay, well, that's another great question, Tom. Funnily enough, I don't remember the 90s as much as I do the 80s, but I do recall a few things. Of course, the family would always go Christmas caroling, so that was still there. I remember most of all when I was in high school, my Sunday school class would go Christmas caroling to the hospital. And I was just learning guitar, so I didn't play, but there was a guitarist and a 12-string guitarist, and there was about maybe 7 or 8 of us, and we all went to the hospital, and I don't know if it was just because of the times that you could do things like this back then, or if it was because of, the teacher knew somebody, but we were actually able to go around the hospital's hallways and not go into the rooms per se, but we were able to stand in their doorway and sing to each of the people, and you could just see their faces light up. And I remember that particularly was awesome. Other than that, it was pretty standard, except some of the movies that were a little more adult, like Scrooged and Christmas Vacation, things like that, we also really got into. But of course, there were some newer movies like Jingle All the Way as well. Other than that, we've stayed pretty much with what we already did. We saw the Rankin Bass, we saw the Grinch, and Charlie Brown Christmas and things like that. So other than you know what? There was also it was a time when I remember hosting a Christmas party, and there was of course, M&M cookies because that was our tradition, presents, white elephant gifts in particular, and then just food, dancing, friends, that kind of thing. It was a lot of fun. I think I started it off, and then some of my other friends took it over the following years. But yeah, it was a group of us. It was about 10 to 12 of us, and we all just kind of got together and had our little Christmas parties, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah, that's it from the 90s. All right. April from North Carolina says, what is your favorite toy that you received at Christmas during your childhood in the 80s? Oh, well, that one's pretty simple, actually. That one was Castle Grayskull, of course. That one was amazing. And though I also got Voltron and, as I've said earlier, Mega Man 2 and a few other things, I always remember Castle Grayskull, along with the Batmobile from the Superpowers line, because Batman was always my favorite. I got one here. Let's see. Tony from New York. Sorry, that was a terrible accent. Please don't turn me off. Tony says, are you ready to freaking rage for Christmas? This is actually an inside joke. Tony, thanks for bringing it up. So I work at a Christmas store, and I worked with a great guy. He was just, really, really fun kind of guy, lots and lots of energy. And one day lady, probably in her 60s, she was coming through the doors, and he just turns to her and said, ma'am, are you ready to freaking rage for Christmas? And of course, we all kind of laughed after the look on her face, but my manager just turned to him and said, no. So we teased him about it for the rest of the season. But Tony, that was a great question. Yes, to answer your question, yes, I'm always ready to freaking rage for Christmas. I just might not say it to all of my customers, but yes, I'm definitely ready. That's great. Oh man. Next up, Anthony from New York. Oh, hey, that's kind of similar. Tony from New York, Anthony from New York. Anthony says, if you could incorporate any other classic Christmas special into the Rankin Bass universe, which would you choose? Which seemed to fit most naturally? I probably should have thought about these before I actually decided to incorporate this. I think the special that I would choose would probably be the Grinch, because I think that one would fit most naturally into the Rankin Bass universe. It's got the kind of oddball things with a Grinch that wants to just steal everything. That seems very Meisterburger to me. But also the design, and then the Grinch himself is kind of oddball. So I could see him fitting perfectly in with like King Moonracer and the Miser Brothers, especially because he's the Grinch, so he's definitely a little grumpy, a little crabby there. I mean, because Charlie Brown just wouldn't fit. I don't think. I mean, Garfield wouldn't fit. Alf, actually, Alf probably could fit, but that special actually is. It's definitely a relatively normal, so I don't think that would work. Maybe Pac-Man. Pac-Man might work, although that special is awful. The He-Man, G.I. Joes, I mean, those are great, but I don't think they'd really, I'm going to go with the Grinch. I think the Grinch really kind of embodies that zany Rankin Bass out there kind of style. And I think that would be a perfect fit. So yeah, the Grinch, that's my answer. And I think we're going to close the mailbag up for now. We'll let some of those letters get to Santa. And Mr. Kluger, you can be on your way. So let's move on. We got some suggestions here. Ooh, I love suggestions because there's a lot of things in the 80s and I might miss something. So I got Chris from New York says, have you considered doing an ep about Ghostbusters 2? Oh, you know what? This is Chris from Christmas Time in the City podcast. Oh, thank you, Chris. Have I considered doing Ghostbusters 2? I really hadn't. But it seems going on, he says, we're planning on doing a breakdown episode much closer to Christmas, similar to our Home Alone 2 episode. Well, you know what, Chris? I would love to have you on and we can talk Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2. And is it really Christmassy? No, but you know what? I had some Ghostbusters toys and I probably got a couple of them for Christmas. So, and I know some people did. So, you know what? We're going to count it. So, yeah, Chris and Chris from Christmas Time in the City podcast, hit me up later on in the season and we'll get it done. Sounds great. I got Todd from Missouri here who wants to do a wrestling. I was never huge into wrestling. The most I know about it is the Hulk Hogan's Rockin' Wrestling, and probably, let's see, No Holds Barred movie, which, by the way, is just a bonkers movie, but is pretty funny. So, yeah, I definitely do that. Yeah, why not? Let's Todd. Well, I'll message you, and we can definitely get a whole wrestling thing going. Oh, you guys. I see what you're doing, Todd Killian and Christmas Time in the City. You know what? And I love it. I see what you're doing and I love it. Yeah, we'll definitely have some more guest appearances from you guys. Now, I've got Jason Rhodes here who says, I'm not sure if you were a fan of the Dukes, but I had no idea they had a cartoon, let alone a Christmas episode. I think it aired in 1983. And he sent me a link to A Dickens of a Christmas. It's season 2, episode 4 of the Dukes of Hazzard cartoon, which I didn't really know. I did not know they had a cartoon, but you know what? It looks definitely, I mean, it's definitely looks pretty rad. So I'm down to do that, Jason. And you know what? If you want to be on the episode, you message me and we'll get that going too. I'm always up for people joining me, and that sounds like a lot of fun. I did like the Dukes of Hazzard. They were not my favorite, but I liked them, and I have a feeling this is going to be just some kind of kooky, crazy, but pretty cool thing. So yeah, let's do it. Oh man, you guys are really bringing it today. Sounds amazing. I think, you know what? I think I have some more suggestions, but I think I'm going to save them for later. So I think for now, yeah, Ghostbusters 2, wrestling. I'm sure there's something to do with Christmas and wrestling in there. And the Dukes of Hazzard Christmas episode. Yeah, I'm down for all of that. So I'll get in touch with you guys and we'll make it happen. But you know what? I'm not here just to read mail and go over suggestions. I actually have something I want to talk about. Now, it's a movie that really has been very special to me, and I think part of it is because I'm the same age as Macaulay Culkin, which is kind of cool. But I really want to talk about Home Alone. Now, we're not going to do a whole episode on Home Alone because, well, that's one of those movies that you need to have friends and family on. You got to have people to talk it over with you. I think I'm just going to talk about some of the music to Home Alone tonight. How does that sound? Pretty good? I hope it sounds pretty good. So, for the score, and some of this, some of my notes here are going to be taken from Mike Matessino's liner notes for the Home Alone 25th anniversary limited edition score. Now, of course, the music was composed by John Williams, composed and conducted, which is not often common in Hollywood nowadays. But John Williams is one of those professionals that definitely will almost always conduct his own stuff. So originally, and this is where it kind of gets pretty interesting. So Chris Columbus, the director, they originally went to Bruce Broughton. He had done the score for Young Sherlock Holmes, and Chris Columbus really enjoyed it. So they approached him to do the score. Unfortunately, in that time frame that he was going to have, he had a conflict, a scheduling conflict. He had already said yes to do The Rescuers Down Under. So he couldn't make it work. Now later, of course, Broughton went on to score Miracle on 34th Street remake and also All I Want for Christmas, which sometime I think in July or August I'm going to be on Tis the Podcast, and we're going to be talking about that one. That one's very special to me. I'm going to get my brothers on that one. We're going to have a whole episode on that as well, which is really cool. I hope they remember it because for me, the biggest thing was we snuck in because we went to see it with my aunt, and she had this huge oversized handbag, and we snuck in McDonald's. So for some reason that just always stuck out to me. So, but anyway, so Bruce Broughton eventually went on to do some Christmas movies, but he missed out on Home Alone because of scheduling. So, you know, Chris Columbus and some of the producers just kind of talking about it, I'm going to quote Chris Columbus here. He said, "We went to John Williams thinking he'll never do a film like this, but he saw the film, loved it, and decided to do it." And so it's funny because that year in 1990, John Williams told the Boston Globe that he didn't have any film commitments, and he said, quote, "I passed on a couple of things. I'm still looking for the right project at the right time," and that he didn't want to do a picture now. "I've been working on a clarinet concerto, but a friend talked me into going to a screening, and I just went dippy over the movie. It gave me the same feeling as E.T., although it's a small picture without that physical scope. I think the public is going to go crazy for this." And you know what? He was right. I mean, the public totally went crazy for it. It was a mega hit, and a lot of it was because of his score. It's one of those scores that really sticks out in your mind. All the melodies are memorable. They're typical John Williams. And while I know Bruce Broughton would have done a great job, I think the master John Williams, who most people recognize as probably one of the greatest, if not the greatest film composer of all time. I mean, of course, you couldn't touch it. Now, for me, I love John Williams, but Jerry Goldsmith is a little bit more up there. He's my favorite composer, but that's because he uses a lot more of the avant-garde type, 20th century style techniques of composition. The 12-tone rows and a lot of that Stravinsky primitivism, and he also uses just exotic and weird instrumentation, things like the guica and the a didgeridoo and a conch and a serpent and things like that. The shofar in Planet of the Apes. I mean, using mixing bowls. He uses all sorts of things, microtones. But so for me, I've always been into Jerry Goldsmith a little bit more. But John Williams is a master of melody, and it's just something about his compositional style that I've always loved. So let's get into the music for a bit. Now, John Williams wrote 2 songs for this. The first was Somewhere in My Memory, and the second was A Star of Bethlehem. Both of those were written by the famed lyricist Leslie Bricusse. He wrote the lyrics to Star of Bethlehem just 3 weeks before the previews, the nationwide previews, which is, I mean, it's an amazing feat, by itself. But he took that and he sculpted this melody that's instantly memorable. So the main theme, as soon as the music comes on, we have the movie comes on with the main titles. We have the theme, which uses of course, it's synthesizer. It's not an actual instrument, but a synthesized celesta. And synthesized chimes as well. Now, the celesta, most people might know as that glockenspiel sounding, that really high-pitched tinny instrument that is used in the Nutcracker suite, in the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairies. So automatically you have that connection to Christmas. Of course, he also uses just rhythmic jingle bells, just these, which again, another standard. As soon as you hear them, people immediately think of holidays. So John Williams is a very, very smart man. And so incorporating some of these classic sounds into his main theme and using it in his main theme, which, by the way, he also uses a celesta in the Harry Potter main theme, he's immediately able to draw into that magic and fantasy that most people had already been associating with holidays just because of the Nutcracker. Now, right away, you got that pair of descending minor thirds. Again, it makes you think of Gustav Holst, because John Williams is very much an Aaron Copland, Gustav Holst style. It's very nationalistic, but very folksy as well. Of course, he can also go really big, and so he's often bases a lot of his works on the planets. I mean, Star Wars is just tons of the planets all over the place. But in this particular case, he uses the celesta and those minor thirds that we get in like Neptune and Mercury and things like that. And so it's great. It's just great. And so we immediately get into that dun 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 dun, that those chromatic runs there, and some mischief is gonna happen. Oh man. But one thing that I love about this score is the way John Williams uses musical jokes. So, Old Man Marley, throughout most of the movie, Kevin is just scared of Marley because of the way his brother Buzz, tells him all those rumors that he murdered his family and he put them in, preserves them in salt and, not enough evidence to convict, all that stuff. And so he's just scared of Old Man Marley. So what John Williams does, his biggest musical joke of this whole, of the whole presentation is he takes the Dies Irae theme. Now, for those of you that don't know, the Dies Irae is the funeral sequence sung at Latin Requiem masses. So it's done right before the gospel, and it goes something like this, like Dies Irae, dies illa, solve et seclum in favilla, teste David cum sibilla. But those very first notes, bum, 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 bum. Now, Hector Berlioz used those as an idée fixe in his Symphonie Fantastique. And so he was the very first person to kind of take that association with death and use it in a classic composition. And ever since then, people have been taking bits and parts of different traditional chants and melodies and using those and their associations to evoke some particular emotions. So John Williams, he takes that theme, which, by the way, he also used in Star Wars, and you can really hear it, especially when, after Luke runs back home to his moisture farm, and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru have been killed, and you can hear bum, 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 bum. And so John Williams takes that theme, bum, 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 and he associates it with Old Man Marley. Now, this is where the joke comes in. Another very, very prominent theme that we hear is the Ukrainian bell carol, the Carol of the Bells, which most people will know is, hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, bum, 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 bum. Well, those first notes, bum, 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 are the same as the Dies Irae. And so what John Williams does is he takes those notes of the Dies Irae and then he fills it out. And so all this time, I mean, it's brilliant. All this time, Kevin, we as the audience are associating this death kind of scary theme when really it's just another traditional Christmas carol. I mean, I don't know how he comes up with this stuff, but it's amazing. That's why most people think he's a master. So, of course, we get just as typical John Williams, we get a lot of leitmotifs. So we have the burglar's theme, we have Kevin's theme. There's all sorts of just little motives and themes that are snuck in around the score, and it's just it's so great. So the Star of Bethlehem song is weaved in and out. The Somewhere in My Melody is weaved in and out. It's just one of those things that that over and over again, we see John Williams doing, not only in his score but especially in this one. Of course, we also see, like, for example, when they're running to the airport, we see the his holiday flight theme, I guess you could call it. That kind of thing. And so we hear that as well. And then as Kevin's going outside, we hear the which is that Star of Bethlehem theme. And it's just, he does it so well, and he just makes it, he interweaves it all amazingly. But the part that I really want to bring up is during the setting the trap cue, which is when, right after he's talked with Old Man Marley in the church, and he's finally kind of realized that he's not as scary as he thought. He runs home to defend his house, and as he's running home, we get a variation of the Carol of the Bells. Dun 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 dun, that kind of theme. Now that sounds eerily similar to Harry Potter's theme, bum 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 bum. And when I taught film music, film scoring, I remember actually overlaying those themes and showing, the fully notated scores for each one of those, and you can see the similarities. And so it's just another one of those typical things when, composers kind of reuse some of their ideas, just changed. And so I always kind of laughed at that. But of course, at the end, another cool thing that he does before we move on, another really cool thing that I always liked was that he actually got Mel Torme to sing, "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" there at the end, and it's gorgeous, nice orchestral, lush, strings and everything behind it. It's just it's amazing. But that's the very tip of the iceberg. For the score, of course, it ends on "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," played by the full orchestra, that traditional English carol, and that's Home Alone. Again, I can really go into it, but what I probably will do is post the two variations of the that Carol of the Bells theme. So anyway, next time you watch Home Alone, I hope that whenever you hear "Oh Man Marley," you think bum 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 bum, those first four notes of the Dies Irae, and realize that they're actually setting you up in a very interesting and kind of tricky way, because it's actually the first four notes of Carol of the Bells. Oh man. So Home Alone, amazing. We're going to get to it closer to the Christmas season. Of course, we're going to get to it. We wouldn't be rad if we left that out. But before that, we got some really cool things coming up. So next week, we have Chris and Chris from Christmas Time in the City podcast, and we're going to be talking Scrooged. That's one of my favorites, 1989, just a great movie. The week after that, another great special, actually, it's A Muppet Family Christmas, and I'm going to be joined by Mike Westfall from Advent Calendar House podcast. The week after that, we're going to go Christmas adjacent, if you want to call it that, and we're going to talk Superman with Tim Babb from Can't Wait for Christmas podcast. And we got some other things coming up. We got A Christmas Story with Josh and Kristen Black from Decorator's Warehouse. We also have Dwayne Bailey from Tinsel Tunes, and we're going to be talking about Last Christmas. So that's, I'm really excited for the upcoming weeks. We got just some fantastic guests coming on, some very funny segments, and some great impressions as always. But the moment you've all been waiting for, bum, 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 or something like that. The rules for the Totally Rad contest. So, our Totally Rad contest is actually going to be for a few different prizes. We've got a really cool Advent calendar with Santa on it. We got a way cool Santa figurine. Got a couple of Christmas mugs as well. And all this stuff I'm going to post pictures of as well, as we get closer to the actual drawing date. But the rules for how to enter our Totally Rad contest, first, you need to like and share our page. If you already like it, well, just go ahead and share our page. You need to review us on iTunes. That's another way you can get your name entered. So already, that's two ways. And finally, if you comment on the post for this episode, it can be anything from, pretty cool Minisode to, well, that was ridiculous. Why didn't you have a full episode? Kind of a thing. It doesn't matter what you comment. Just comment on our on the post for this episode. So that's another way to enter. So there's actually three ways to get your name entered into the drawings for these different prizes. So the grand prize will be that really cool Advent calendar. Then the second prize will be the Santa figurine. And then, of course, after that, we've got several mugs that we'll be raffling off as well. So three ways to get your name entered. Go ahead and do that. Not only do you get a chance to win some cool Christmas merch from our store, but you also help spread Christmas cheer and hopefully bring a smile and a feeling of nostalgia, those warm fuzzies all over someone's day. So I'm very excited for this. I think it's going to be a great time. And until then, as much as I would like to continue talking because I love talking, I'm going to say Merry Christmas. Hope everybody's doing well, and later, dudes.